Mom spends thousands of my money on my entitled sister's wedding, but I froze the account and spoiled it. I'm going through a strange problem in life. Actually, it's not really a problem, more of a dilemma. My mom and sister have been using me for years, and now they've crossed every limit of exploitation. I want to cut them off, but that would mean pushing them into poverty, which feels harsh. Still, I'm done giving in to their demands. I'm 38F, married, with 2 kids, living in Ohio for the past 6 years. My roots are in Houston. My childhood was difficult. My parents divorced when I was 10, and my dad left us, accusing my mom of infidelity. To this day, it's still debated whether it was just an accusation or if it was true, because my mom never remarried. When they split, my dad suspected my sister wasn't his, which led to their divorce. He let mom keep the house where we lived, and moved out. He paid for my education but not for my sister's, no child support for her, and I don't know why mom never fought for it. Maybe that's why everyone believed dad's suspicion that my sister wasn't his. Dad was mostly absent during my childhood. He'd sometimes show up at school to pay fees or bring gifts. But when I reached high school, I contacted him, and from then on, he was part of my life. He even attended my wedding despite my mom's resistance. Over the years, I bonded more with my dad than with my mom. He visited Ohio twice after I settled here, but that didn't last long. He was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and last year we lost him. Mom didn't like how close I was with dad, and her attitude toward me turned cold. Dad had 2 marriages after divorcing my mom, but he never had children with his second wife. He always said I was his only daughter, and that I was his heir. Naturally, this fueled my mom and sister's dislike. Dad loved me, and I inherited his $400,000 trust fund. It wasn't just about that inheritance. Growing up, Dad paid for my schooling, allowing me to attend better schools and a good college, even better than my sister's. Overall, I had a better life, thanks to the child support and dad support. My parents divorced when I was 10, and by then, the child support and education money had started coming in when I turned 12. Mom had little control over that money. The school fees went straight to the school, and some of the support money was spent on my sister and household needs. I was clever enough not to complain, so mom kept me happy. I wouldn't say they were evil, but they definitely didn't like me. They stuck close to each other while I just existed. I was smart, academically and in general, enough to not be treated as a doormat or walked over. That's probably why mom never managed to ill-treat me outright. Today's biggest issue is the $400,000 dad left me. Ever since my mom and sister found out about it, they've been after me to borrow money, one thing or another. Honestly, it's not the first time they've reached out financially. Since I started working, I've helped them as my income grew, but I don't owe them anything. I help because they're family and they earn much less than me. Mom works as a cashier, sister in sales at a boutique. They collectively make less than half of what I do, so I feel obliged. We're not emotionally close, but they've never been mean or evil to me. I hope everyone understands I'm not confused about my feelings. A couple of months ago, mom called to say she wanted to renovate the house. Walls, ceilings, floors, all damaged from years of neglect since dad left. The house had never been painted, wiring never fixed. The walls and ceilings were crumbling. She said it was hard to live there during storms and rains, and that she tried to get a loan but the interest was too high. I understood what she was hinting at. She needed money for the renovation. It was an awkward chat because I knew what she wanted, but neither of us directly talked about it. After that, I started ignoring her calls. She rarely calls, usually once a month, but last month, she called 3 or 4 times. When I finally answered, she said it was unsafe to stay in the house because it was falling apart. This time, she was upfront and asked me for the money, promising to pay back in installments. I asked how much she needed. She said $100,000. I lost my mind. I told her I couldn't lend that much. She hinted at the inheritance money. I was furious but didn't push the point about the trust fund. I said I could lend only $50,000, and she agreed. Later, I realized I was impulsive. $50,000 is a lot, and I should have just ignored it. I didn't want to lend such a large sum, but I'd already committed. My husband suggested I give the money in installments and monitor the house's progress before releasing more. So, I told my mom I'd send $50,000 in parts. I activated an old Houston account, transferred $10,000 there, and gave her access, under the pretext of my husband's idea. She asked why I didn't send it directly to her. I made some excuse. Honestly, I hoped this would work out, but I wasn't very hopeful. I just wanted her to return the money, though I had doubts. Update 1. I can't quite pin down how my mom and sister tried to manipulate me for the easy money. It's been 2 months since I started lending her money for the house. I've given $20,000 so far, and I refuse to give more. I always suspected they were only nice to me for the cash, but I never imagined they'd lie so openly and severely to get more. Recently, I found out my sister is getting married, not from family, but from a school friend whose husband's a wedding planner. My sister's been in touch with his agency. That's what they call a grand wedding. I think she had no idea I knew, because if she did, she wouldn't have made it so obvious. A wedding costing at least $50,000, with a venue, decorations, food, drinks, all lavish. It hurts to learn about her wedding through others, especially since I wasn't even invited. I thought it was an intimate affair, but my friend told me the guest list was about 100. It was heartbreaking not to be included. Even more upsetting was the money. Where did she get the funds to organize such a lavish event? The venue alone cost around $20,000, with top-notch decor, food, and drinks. I checked the bank account where I'd been sending money for her renovation, and it was empty. I called Mom to ask if the work had begun. She said yes, she hired a renovation company, but nothing had started. I couldn't believe her lies. I wasn't sure if they'd already spent my money on her wedding, but I was disgusted, spending so much on her wedding while taking money from me for the house. For a moment, I even thought of flying to Houston to see for myself, but I knew it wasn't worth it. Instead, I called my aunt, my dad's sister, who lives nearby. I asked if she knew about my sister's wedding. She confirmed but said she wasn't invited either. Mom isn't fond of Dad's side, so that's understandable. My aunt said the wedding had become the talk of the neighborhood. Their house, which used to be falling apart, now looks shiny and new, painted, decorated, completely transformed. I was dizzy hearing this. Then I remembered, about 6 months ago, Mom asked me for $20,000 for her knee transplant. I called her, asking where she did the surgery. I lied, saying a friend needed orthopedic info for her father's knee operation. She fumbled and said she didn't remember the hospital or doctor's name. When I pressed for details, she struggled, then pretended to have network issues and hung up. When I called again, her phone was off, and she didn't reply to my messages. I knew she was lying. The money I gave her for the transplant had been used for house repairs, and now she was using the house money for her daughter's wedding. She even told me her daughter's engagement was held on our front lawn, with lilies and overflowing wine. I felt like I was living in a bubble, completely unaware of their lavish lifestyle, pretending to be poor to drain my resources. So, I decided to ghost them. I stopped sending money into that account. When Mom called, I ignored her. I didn't reply to her texts. Sister, who never called me in all these years, tried reaching out, but I didn't respond. I've made up my mind, I won't entertain their lies or manipulations anymore. It doesn't matter that I earn more or that Dad left me an inheritance. It doesn't give them the right to leech off me. My big day update, I was right about my mom. When I cut off contact, she called my husband, crying, saying I'd ghosted her, claiming she needed the money to finish the renovation that was almost done. My husband, being, well, a bit of a spoil sport, blurted out the truth. I knew she'd been using me all along, and that the money was actually for my sister's wedding. That's why I cut them off. I was so angry at him for spoiling everything. He also admitted he knew about the lies, about the knee surgery funds being diverted for her wedding, and that's why I stopped supporting them. After that call, my mom bombarded me with apologies, claiming it was a misunderstanding. She said she borrowed money for the house and was repaying it with my money. I told her I'd only talk if she promised to tell me everything honestly. She agreed. When I finally questioned her, she confessed that my sister wanted a lavish wedding but didn't have the funds. So, she decided to ask me for help, using the house renovation as an excuse. She knew I hadn't been to Houston in years and wasn't close to anyone there, so she thought I wouldn't find out. She told me my sister didn't want to ask me directly, she didn't want to seem like she was asking for a favor. I told her I already knew the house was repaired with the money I'd given for the knee transplant. She fell silent. I said I knew the truth, there was no reason to hide anymore. She claimed the house was falling apart because her in-laws wanted to visit, and they needed urgent repairs. She said she panicked and claimed the house needed an emergency fix, then used the excuse of an urgent knee transplant to get the money transferred within hours. Even though I pretended to be okay on the call, I was crying inside. How could my own mother do this? I understand their financial struggles, but that doesn't give them the right to manipulate and extort me with emotional blackmail. After hearing everything, I hung up and cried for hours. I don't remember the last time I cried so hard, maybe during my father's passing. That day, I felt like he was the only one who genuinely loved and cared for me. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Mom. "Now that you know everything, can you please send the remaining amount so we can continue with the wedding preparations?" It was so disgusting. No remorse, just greed. They didn't even invite me to the wedding, not even for a formality. When I heard the truth, I was so overwhelmed with frustration I blocked them both. I also warned my husband not to answer their calls. If he disobeys, I told him he'd sleep outside, in the cold, dead serious. I stay in close touch with my aunt, who told me the wedding's next month. I didn't tell her the full story about the money, but I know, they're struggling more each day to put together this dream wedding. Honestly, I hope they suffer a bit, as a consequence of their greed and lies. Update 3. I kept receiving calls and voicemails from Mom and sister until the wedding day, asking for money. I stood firm, refused to budge. On the wedding day, my mom's final message was that she was ashamed of me and disowning me, telling me I should never call her mom or visit her again. I was crushed. I cried in front of my husband. People might say I'm cold or stubborn for ruining my sister's wedding, or call me arrogant and self-centered. But she never considered her lies. She deceived me all along. I helped because I felt obligated. I thought they were family. But they saw me as nothing but a cash machine. On the wedding day, I also received a call from a friend whose husband was the wedding planner. She told me the wedding was likely to be cancelled, because they hadn't paid the remaining expenses. I asked how much they'd paid so far. She said $20,000. I told her that was enough for a decent wedding. She agreed, but said my sister had ordered top-tier decorations and food, and the venue alone cost about $20,000. She asked if I was attending. I said no, had other plans. She knew I wasn't close to my mom or sister, so I was just silently hurting inside because I felt responsible for ruining her wedding. For a moment, I even thought of transferring the remaining money to her and asking her to continue as planned, but then I remembered my mother's last message, disowning me. Why bother? What's the point of doing all that, only to be cast aside? So I turned off my phone, took my kids out for a day, and tried to forget all of it. The next day, my friend called again, furious at my sister, because the wedding's reputation was suffered. People criticized the arrangements, blamed the planner, but my sister blamed him. My friend said her husband was so angry he wanted to expose the truth, but my mom begged him not to ruin her daughter's life. He stayed silent, took the blame, and let the wedding go on. They still haven't paid the remaining $10,000, and I felt so embarrassed hearing all this. I stayed quiet. My friend said she didn't blame me, just shared her frustration. I felt terrible, my family's reputation damaged, and I was helpless. After learning all this, my husband said they got what they deserved and I shouldn't worry. They brought this misery on themselves trying to impress everyone with lies and false appearances. I'm glad I've stayed away from their tricks. Honestly, I believe my mother's disowning was a blessing. Finally, I don't have to deal with their lies and manipulation. I feel free now, finally.